Alright, so this is part 4 of my Peru video. I'm just going to go over the Punic Empire, or like the Phoenicians, and how their empire was, in my opinion, bigger and better than the Roman Empire. Alright, so just a review from my previous video. So that picture right here of the global map, that's like the geomagnetic anomaly. It's There's like a hole in the magnetic field over South America. And I think that's something cataclysmic happened there. Um, so the story of the Bible happened, in my opinion, in South America. And there's a picture of the map, biblical South America. So there's a red river uh, underneath Peru, which I think is the Red Sea, the original Red Sea. Um, the map's a little weird because I use ChatGPT, but it's for the most part it's what I kind of imagined. Uh, so the picture on the bottom left, that's the Japeth lineage, and then the picture over here is the Phoenix. So the legend. So when you type out Phoenician, so the Phoenicians or the Punics. So the Punics are the Western, from what I understand, are the Western Phoenicians, and then Phoenicians are from the Eastern. Um, so Punics were like in Carthage, North Africa, and then there's the other Phoenicians, etc., etc. But the Phoenician itself, so when you type out, so the Greek etymology, what the Phoenician word means is Greek for phoenix. So I put the definition there. So it means Greek is phoenix, Phoenician reddish purple or phoenix. And if you know anything about the legend of Phoenix, it's a legendary bird that rebuilds itself or is reborn from its ashes. So I think that the Greeks named the Phoenicians because they survived the cataclysm and then they rebuilt their empire after this cataclysmic event. So so the Japeth lineage, so so the Phoenicians come from South America and then they extend across the Pacific towards Southeast Asia. And then I kind of go over this in my previous videos. So this other guy, um, so this guy named Juan Morix, he kind of had a similar idea, and he thought that everyone kind of originated. So the language, so he kind of wrote here. He wrote a book called El Origen Americano de los Europeos. So he put European civilization, including its languages, symbols, and ancestral populations, originated not in the Old World but in the Americas. He argues that South America, especially the Amazon Andes region, Ecuador's Tayo system, was the cradle of prehistoric master civilization that later migrated eastward to and from the early cultures of Europe and the Mediterranean. So this guy wrote a book, and from what I understand, this he kind of influenced this other guy, von Daniken, I think. He wrote a book, Chariot of the Gods, I think, about like aliens and stuff. And according to this Juan Morix guy, he found a cave de los Tallos, where there is like a golden, there's a bunch of golden books. And in this cave, I kind of highlighted over here. It says, he claims that one of the caverns in the cave contains a polished stone desk with large books made of gold. Morix describes the books as having engraved hieroglyphs and would later assign the writing as Phoenician and cuneiform. So during the first encounter with the Golden Library, 4 aliens spoke telepathically to him, congratulating for his wit in getting into the cavern. He never gave it an exact location in the metallic library and demanded that anyone wanting to verify his claim give him money. So he found this library in the Andes region, and apparently aliens started speaking to him. He said the words in these books were Phoenician, and it's probably the Library of Nineveh. I don't know. It's a fringe theory, I guess you could say. And then here's so in this same region, Father Crespi, it's another guy related to this theory, von Daniken theory, and you can find the same imagery in Mesopotamia. So that's what this picture over here is. And then over here, it's Herodotus. So Herodotus is like he's considered the father of history, and he was some Greek guy. And in his book, I forgot what book, it's like Histories or something like that. Well, in his work, he described a mysterious tribe called the Atlantis, living near the Atlas Mountains. He says they never ate animals, never had dreams, cursed the sun when it rose and set. No one knows exactly what group he was referring to. But if you see my first part of this video, I kind of wrote Atlas means Andes. So Atlas is Andes Mountains. And then in this bottom one, I got this from another video from Robert Seffer, I think. Uh, he put Helena, it's from some mystic lady, Helena Blavatsky. And she wrote, the mysteries of the Jews were identical with those of the pagan Greeks, who took them from the Egyptians, who borrowed them in turn from the Chaldeans, who got them from the Aryans, the Atlanteans, and so on. So she claims that this story of the Jews in the Bible are the same of the pagan Greeks, of the Greeks, of the Egyptians, etc., etc., etc. And then she ends with the Atlanteans. So, so basically, this story is the same story. It's just passed around. Mm. So, in the book of in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, he goes over. I mean, it's a long book, but it's hard to summarize, really. But he wrote about four empires that we're gonna go over it, and these images over here symbolize the four empires. I'm not gonna go over everything. It's kind of just like skimming through it. But so in his dream, in the king's dream, he had the head was made out of fine gold, and it symbolized the first empire. The chest and arms were silver, belly and thighs were bronze, etc., etc. So you kind of see in this image, and it kind of goes like this, and it symbolizes four empires. And then Daniel's vision, which is on the other side of the image, he wrote a lion with wings of an eagle. So that's pretty. It's over here. Kind of symbolizes Babylon. So in the Bible, Babylon is the first true global empire. Um, the second one, empire, he wrote a bear with three ribs in its mouth. So that's right here. And then leopard with four wings and four heads. And then this weird beast. I'm not gonna go over the lion with wings and an eagle because it's like Babylon, which is, I mean, it could be a video in itself, really. So the third kingdom, a leopard with four wings and four heads. So that's what he wrote his book. I think it symbolizes the Maya, Aztec, Inca, and some other tribe, Toltecs maybe, I don't know. But the silver one, so the second empire, second kingdom, he wrote a bear raised on one side and with three ribs in its mouth. But maybe it wasn't a bear, maybe it was a black panther, right? So the Olmec Empire. So there's a lot of uh, civilizations that kind of like were around simultaneously. So the Olmec civilization, Phoenicia, and Carthage, they kind of overlap all around this time period. The Eastern I don't know how to say that. It's the China one, the Zhou dynasty. The Persian Empire, the Lydian Empire of Anatolia, and they kind of like all overlap around the same time period. So if I'm right, that means this like group of people dominated like half the world really. So I wrote a map of this Punics, Phoenician, maybe even Olmec. Maybe the Olmecs are the Phoenicians. I don't know. The Olmec heads. The Olmec heads, they have like very similar to this Chinese helmet. So it kind of has like a very similar. Uh, it just looks the same really, and it overlaps around the same time period. And then this uh, sculpture is it's an Olmec art, but it looks Asian. Like you can see right away that's Asian. That's an Asian guy. I don't know how people don't see that and they're like, that's definitely Asian, bro. So maybe the Asians, maybe there was like some sort of trade or something between Asians, South America, Central America, Mexico. I don't know. But around the same time, you got the Olmec heads, and then the Great Wall of China was being built. There's a lot of like overlap. Another fringe theory is that Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan's real name is Temujin Khan, and he had like 1,000 children, like everywhere he went. So there's a good. So my theory is that Temujin Khan, Genghis Khan had a child in the Americas, and he named him Tenoch. So then this guy founded Mexico City, Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan. Um, the Olmec art. Look at that. The Olmec art. I'm kind of just going over this real quick because I'm already at 12 minutes. The Olmec art looks very Asiatic. It looks like a dragon, really. And then this one, that's Olmec as well, I think. I forgot where I got that from. And then over here, all the way to the far right, there's like a Mexican. It's a Codex of Mendoza. So the Spanish, when they came, they kind of brought artists and they jotted down the history of the Aztecs and the Aztecs described uh, how they founded the city. And apparently, there's like right next to the eagle to the left, there's like a Native American, but he's like gray. I don't maybe he was like Mongolian or something. So maybe Tenoch was Mongolian. Same thing with the Qin dynasty. So so in China around the same time period, there was a Qin dynasty. But and then at the same time they named themselves China. Well, they didn't name themselves, but they started calling themselves, referring to them as China. So the name China comes around this dynasty. But you can see the same phonetic sound, I guess, everywhere in Mesoamerica: Chichen Itza, Chihuahua, China, etc. Um, all right, so the one on the far left, it's called the Aztec flint knife origin legend, as recorded by Fray Mendieta. So this is a flint knife is basically like the tip of the spear it's like a stone or a rock. It's the tip of the spear. And so according to this Aztec origin legend, the fall of the flint knife. So in the beginning, before the current world age, the gods gathered in the heavens from above, and a sacred flint knife was cast down to earth. So this giant stone just fell down to earth. The knife fell from the sky and struck the land in Chicomostoc, the place of the seven caves or in some tellings at Tamochan, the mythical place of origin. When the flint knife struck the ground, it shattered, and the birth of the gods. So among them were figures later associated with those names. I'm not going to say them. Tezcatlipoca, Huitzilopochtli, other war and death deities, the gods hunger for blood. So Mendieta, so the guy, I think he's a Fray Mendieta, so he's like a priest of some sort. The gods hunger for blood. So Mendieta emphasizes that these gods demanded nourishment. They declared that the earth could not endure. I don't know how to say that word. The sun could not move. Life could not continue unless they were fed with blood and hearts. This is how the Mexica explained the necessity of human sacrifice, not as cruelty, but as cosmic obligation rooted in the very birth of the gods. So, so when this knife came down and landed on the earth, according to the Aztec legend, the birth of the god. So a bunch of gods and demon, uh, and war and death deities came out from this rock. I think it were like 1,000 of them or something, from what I understand. And the way Mendieta describes it, it's like demons or like alien demons. And so the reason they Aztecs or the Mexica, which are the future Aztecs, or the past Aztecs, the pre-Aztecs described sacrifice. They would sacrifice to these gods, basically. And you can see over here. So the one all the way on top and the middle one is Olmec art, and you can kind of see that they're coming from some guy coming out of a cave, basically, and he's offering a child, and he kind of has like a cylinder, like a cone hat. Maybe it's a Phoenician hat. I don't know. Um, yeah. Okay, so here, what was I gonna go with this? So the first depiction of, so this is kind of complicated. So the first depiction of, so first of all, the Romans have no history of Jesus' existence. They have no history. They were good at writing down history. They have no history of Jesus' existence. The oldest depiction of Jesus in Rome is called the Alexamenos Graffito, and I put the picture all the way to the right, and basically it's like a guy being crucified, but he has a head of like of an animal. Um, so I'll read it real quick because I'm already at 20 minutes. So the image depicted a human-like figure. So you can read this because I'm not gonna read all this because there's a lot. But they wrote it with the head of a donkey, and it was commonly believed at that time that Christians practiced onolatry. So I put the definition of onolatry, which is a supposed worship of the donkey during antiquity. So they thought that Jews and the Jewish Christians they associated donkeys with uh with this. And so what I'm saying is that since they have no history of Jesus in the Roman Empire, I think the book of Romans is actually like the book of Phoenicians or the book of Atlanteans, something not Roman. They kind of just switched the name because around the same time. So how do you have no history of Jesus, but then you spread Christianity? Not only that, they changed the entire calendar really. So the year zero is during the Roman Empire. Like how does that happen? Not only that, around the same time period, Asia Minor, something happened where they switched it to where it's modern day Turkey. Um, that doesn't even make sense. Like it's not even Asia Minor. But to stay on topic, so what if so they wrote this picture of a guy with like a head of a donkey, but what if it's not a donkey but a llama? Because llamas are from Peru, right? But I don't know. You could read it all. I'm not gonna read all that. So Herodotus. Herodotus, like I said before, he's the father of history. He's a Greek guy, and he mentioned Smyrna, mentioned as an Ionian city. So he mentioned Smyrna as part of Greek city of Asia Minor, and etc. etc. Compared to Miletus, Smyrna plays a smaller role in Arabic. He also references Ephesus in relation to wars and regional politics, blah blah blah. He said Ephesus was also famous for the Temple of Artemis, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. And then he talks about Miletus more than almost any Ionian city. And yeah, so he also described the tragic fall of Miletus. So the Miletus was conquered by the Persians in 494 BC, apparently. And he said, and he wrote, says the destruction shocked the Greek world so much that Athenians wept when they heard about it. And also, a playwright who wrote a tragedy about it was fined for reminding people of the disaster. So anyone who reminded them of this disaster of like being conquered of Miletus, they were fined. So basically, they kind of just wiped that from history. But if you've seen my previous video, Miletus is Malaysia. Miletus, that's why they got it. That's that's why they're so similar in name. So I think Southeast Asia is the real Asia Minor. So in the book of Isaiah, I wrote it over here, 49:12. Behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Sinim. So Sinim is located north and west from this from the Bible. Which, if you start from Peru, north and west is the land of Sinim, which is Southeast Asia. Or and in Southeast Asia, I wrote it right here. This is from ChatGPT. Cinnamon naturally clusters in tropical belt from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Austronesian islands. That includes Sri Lanka, southern India, Indonesia, Vietnam, southern China, Philippines. So maybe it's not. Maybe Sinim is land of cinnamon because that's where cinnamon clusters. Um, so another thing is etymology. So the name, the Bali. So Bali is in Indonesia, and Bali. I underlined it. I highlighted it. I underlined it in red. So the etymology. So the name Bali comes from Bali Dipa. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Dipa means island, and Bali, they think it means it's Sanskrit for offering, tribute, or sacrifice. So when you put them together, it means island of offerings or island of sacrifice. So there was sacrifice in this island of Bali, which is Baal. So I think the Phoenicians were in this area sacrificing to Baal. And over here, this is the Solomon Islands. So the images of South residents of Solomon Islands in South Pacific show that above 10% of the island's dark-skinned population have naturally blonde hair due to a unique mutation. So they have blonde hair and blue eyes, and they think it's just a mutation. They think that originated by itself. Like I'm sure the Greeks, the Phoenicians were coming from Peru, crossed to Australasia, which is Solomon Islands, Southeast Asia, and then the Persians came, wiped them out, and then they just kept traveling towards Turkey and towards Mediterranean. So the Nazis, uh, so the Nazis were kind of into this also. The Nazis expeditions looking for a lost Aryan race in Tibet. So Aryan race means that they were blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Uh, and in 1938 and 1939, I wrote it down, I put it down here, an image. German expedition to Tibet. So a German scientific expedition took place in Tibet between April 1938 to 39. And basically, they were just looking for evidence of a lost Aryan race. So the Nazis believe that this Aryan race, that there existed an Aryan race where everyone originated from. And they went to explore in Southeast Asia, basically, for proof. And there's all these like history. Robert Sepper has a lot on the swastika and how there's like Buddhist. Uh, it's 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 all throughout Southeast Asia how the swastika is everywhere. And over here, um, to the bottom left, there's a Baji. There's a statue called Baji Muka in Cambodia, and it looks a lot very similar to this middle one, Moloch, where there was child sacrifice. So Moloch in the Bible is associated with child sacrifice and how you should not do that. And then right above Moloch, I put an image regarding uh, unusual mortality rates. So in prehistoric cemetery, this is in Salmon Valley in Myanmar, which is Southeast Asia. There is unusually high concentrations of child burials. In some excavated plots, up to 57% of all skeletons discovered were children, with a large majority of those being under 2 years of age. So there's unusually high children burials, and I think that they were practicing child sacrifice in Southeast Asia because the Phoenicians and these Canaanites were worshiping these false gods. So, so what does that mean? So that means the seven churches in Asia Minor in the Book of Revelation. So in the Book of Revelations, it starts off with the Apostle John, I think. He's the one who wrote down uh, Revelations, and he sees Jesus with flaming eyes, I think, and a tongue of sword or something like that. And he basically told him to go to the seven churches in Asia Minor and relay this message to them. And so if I'm correct, that means he's so the Apostle John was exiled in Patmos. So that's where the book of Revelation starts, in Patmos, which is an island off of Jerusalem. So he was exiled from Jerusalem. So this is Peru, and he was on an island right here. And since he couldn't go back because he was exiled, he had to go to seven churches in Asia Minor, which is crossing the Pacific to Southeast Asia. So Ephesus, in my opinion, would be Cambodia, because Ephesus was known for its temple of Artemis, which is this giant temple. And Cambodia is also known for this giant temple called Angkor Wat. Like their entire, like the flag of Cambodia has this temple on their flag because that's their entire identity, really. Angkor Wat. And everyone says that the Khmer built this temple, but I'm sure it was built a long time ago. Three, Pergamos. So I think that's Persian Gulf. Thyatira. So that would be Thyatira. So it would be Thai, the land of Thailand. Sardis was Sri Lanka. Because if you see my previous video, there's like a Machu Picchu like figure in Sri Lanka. And Sardis, from what I understand, it means red. And Sri Lanka, from what I understand, I've never been to any of these places, also has red sand, I think. The beaches were like it's red sand or something. Something I read something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. So the next church is Philadelphia, which is the Philippines, and then Laodicea, the Church of Laodicea, which is Laos. That's where the names come from. Smyrna, I have no idea where that would be. Maybe it's Myanmar, I would say. Maybe it's Myanmar or China or Vietnam. I don't know. But Malaysia is Miletus, and Indonesia, I don't know. But It's 30 minutes long already. Click like, subscribe. Support me on Patreon. I don't have a Patreon.